Good morning. It's Monday, April 6th, 2020. This is For Our People, representing Hakim's Bookstore, 210 South 52nd Street, between Walnut and Chancellor in beautiful West Blackadelphia. Unfortunately, again, I don't know how many weeks we're into this pandemic. So again, we're going to have to do this a little differently and try to upload this to the Facebook website and all that. I guess we got to download Zoom, right? That's the new uh, 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 teleconferencing technique that maybe we should adopt, or maybe not, because if you've been watching the news, it seems like to be a very hackable program. So regardless, we're going to keep it going. We're going to keep this moving. This is episode 3 of the Pandemic Black Business Building series, for all those who are trying to get that inspiration and maybe even just a tiny bit of instruction on how we're going to use this time productively and to help create black businesses that can thrive after all of this is over, because the racial wealth gap is not going to go away, right? I wish Corona would attack the racial wealth gap, but the way things are going, we're more vulnerable than anyone else. That because of the racial wealth gap, we have to take the jobs that aren't able to self-isolate and quarantine and what have you. I mean, that's a whole part of the racial wealth gap and the purpose for white folks exacerbating it on the other hand, so that there will be a certain class of folks, or a caste, CASTE, a caste of folks who will have to do the dirty work in times like this and expose themselves to dangers. So, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So we're always going to attack economic justice. That's my shtick. I'm DreSmith, SmittyBanton, DreSmith, former law professor for 15 years at American Association of Law School institutions like Howard, Delaware Law School, which was formerly Widener, Florida International University, Penn State, Dickinson School of Law. So my job, as I see it, is to take some of the great scholarship and the knowledge that's pent up in those ivory towers, right? And those ivory towers, and bring them out to the streets, bring them out to the masses, bring them out to all the intelligent folks that I've known and grown up with and all around Philadelphia that appreciate knowledge, even if they didn't have the opportunity to go to law schools and stuff as some of us did. All right. Again, check us out on social media. This is Hakim's Bookstore on Facebook Live. There's Hakim'sBookstore.com, Hakim's Bookstore on Instagram, and all that. You can definitely find us on social media. And not only that, the brother Chris Arnold, Tafari, right? Brothers that are also volunteering and helping out the store and Hakim's Bookstore in any way they can. Remember, Hakim's is 60 years old, right? Second oldest black bookstore in the country, and the oldest was formed, I believe, the same year. So we're talking about one of the oldest black institutions still in the country, especially privately owned. And so it requires, and it's Princess Y, Princess Glenda, all of that, keeping it going from their father, Dawood Hakim. And they've done it with the help of other folks such as Chris Arnold, Tafari, helping them with the marketing. And so what's coming up soon are not just events, but also a newsletter to discuss things and promote the bookstore and the books and the events a little better. Shout out to the Paul Robeson House. Shout out to ACAF. Shout out to all the businesses in West Philly that are going to make it through this, and then we're going to come out on the other side even stronger. Especially those restaurants, right? Tasties, Veganish, Adiola's, 48th Street Grill, Star Fusion, what's the one on Girard Avenue? Just to Serve You, right? Let's make sure we support those businesses so they can be there when we get out of all this, right? What is it? Black and Noble, and the delivery service, I forget the name. Let's support those businesses that had great ideas and are trying to make it happen during these trying times. All right. When the newsletter comes out, there should be a section on resources. One of the ones I wanted to contribute to that newsletter is for all our homeschooling parents. Shout out to all the homeschooling parents, right? Shout out to everybody that's right now homeschooling their kids and trying the best they can. First of all, let me say, as much as I am an academic, I am absolutely for non-traditional means of conveying information. So, what I mean to say by that is, don't stress yourself out. There are, the words they say, sometimes you got to work smarter instead of harder. So when you're stressed out, turn on the History Channel, right? Binge watch the History Channel, right? Economics. We can all learn more economics, so turn on Yahoo Finance or CNBC or what have you, or Bloomberg Television or something like that, and watch the financial channels. Even if you don't understand it yourself, let it just sit there with your kids and let it wash over you to know what the rest of the world, especially the financial world, is talking about. And let those numbers wash over you. And the more you watch it, you'll get it. You'll get it. So just even showing the kids what people are doing with those numbers, showing that there's a world out there dedicated to finance and all these different companies and all that other stuff, just for them to know that that exists, right, is learning. It's education, right? So let's use all those tools we have in front of us. And what we're going to do today is also, when we talk about this pandemic business building, don't forget to include your kids, right? Pandemic business building can be an integral part of your homeschooling your children. That when it comes to writing, when it comes to history, when it comes to arts, when it comes to mathematics, even science, right? That creating this business plan, this way that we're going to create this empire for the whole family, can be a way to engage with your kids and make this homeschooling effort palatable and productive for both of you guys, right? Right. So let's build a record label, right? Ask your kids, tell them that they sing, do they dance, do they rap, right? And whatever they like to do, video games. Let's have a video game tournament. Let's make video games, right? If your kids are playing video games, how about they learn to make video games? And if they learned how to make a video game, how would you be able to help them sell 1 million copies at $50 a pop? 10 million copies at $50 a pop? Woo! The video game industry is huge. It's lucrative. So, whatever your kids are into, I don't care whether it's basketball, whether it's dance, whatever it is, let's build a business around it. Whatever you like to do. Maybe you like to eat, like to travel. Let's build a business around it. We're going to talk about that specifically, and that's going to be part 3 of this pandemic business building, how to turn our hobbies into hustles. Right? How to turn our hobbies into hustles. Now, this whole pandemic just may be stressing you out and getting you down. So if you need this time, and especially for some of y'all got 2-3 jobs before all this started, if you need this time to unwind, to put your feet up, I ain't mad at you. I'm not mad at you. You got to do what serves your best interest. You can't help others unless you help yourself. But for those of us that are looking to strive, that do have some energy, that are able to take this time and use it productively, there's no better way than to try to create a business that can hire our children and hire our people. If we're talking about getting all these folks out of prison, if we're talking about ending bail, cash bail, if we're talking about ending slavery by another name, if we're talking about abolishing the prison system, if we're talking about having all these non-violent folks out on the streets, and they should be, where are they going to work? Where are they going to learn? What are they going to produce? We have to have these institutions set up so that we can cater to the people in our communities, because we know the outsiders ain't going to do it. Let me stop there, and first of all, on a little more somber note, give a shout out to all those that have lost people to COVID. It's getting closer and closer. There's a lot of brothers that I have at least maybe 1 or 2 connections to. So far, I'm very lucky that it hasn't been someone in my immediate cipher, but it has been very close, right outside those walls. So people that I know personally have lost people that are very close to them. So it's not a game, right? And I'm sitting here, I'm in the crib. Even though Hakim's Bookstore, it would only be me and Chris or what have you. We're going to honor the restrictions for now and try to do this remotely. And hopefully everybody else practices the same, flatten the curve. Let's get back out here. My birthday is in June, y'all. I'm trying to get out for my birthday in June. Do you feel me? As a matter of fact, let's have a big ass party at the Platte. Can we do that? When everything is finally safe, can we go back out to the Platte and really do it big? I'll let you know if that's the plan. Shout out to Jazzy Jeff, DJ Jazzy Jeff, West Philly, born and raised. He he got over or recovered from the COVID virus, and even responded by having participating in a DJ show on for Adidas Originals. So shout out to them. Shout out to Bismarcky, DJ Scratch, Ninth Wonder. If you're a true hip hop fan, the only good thing to come out of this is the fabulous DJs that are putting it down out there. Manny Fresh versus Scott Storch, D Nice, of course. Everybody's listening to D Nice. Lord Finesse. Some great music holding us down while we're locked up in the crib. All right, so when we talk about black business building, now of course, again, the theme of this show is about black books. This is for our people. It's honoring Lister Velt Middleton and his show For the People, right? Bringing John Henrik Clarke and Ivan Van Sertima into everyone's homes through public television. So we're trying to do the very same thing. So we got a list of 3 black books that we're going to talk about very shortly. Every week we're going to go through the Journal of Blacks in Higher Education and their weekly book list, so to highlight the ones that are coming out that black scholars have, not just black scholars have produced, but of interest to black scholars. So even though they may have been written by someone other than a black person, knowledge dictates that we are aware of all the things around us, even if we disagree with it. Got to know why exactly we disagree with it. All right, but before we get to that, let's recap where we had been the first 2 weeks ago when we were first talking about this pandemic black business building. The first lesson we wanted to talk about was taking care of your personal finances first. Before we start talking about a business, let's take care of our personal finances. So if we have high interest rate credit cards, pay that down. If you have a credit card or a car loan or a payday loan, and that thing is charging you 20%, 30%, whatever it is, even as low as 15%, then that means paying it off is just like investing and getting 15, 20, 30%, right? A penny saved is a penny earned. So the fact that you prevented, that fact that you weren't paying interest to other people is basically like paying yourself, right? So let's pay down, let's get rid of these credit cards, right? As a matter of fact, pay them down to 0 because you might need them later when it comes to building your business. Borrowing money to make money. So instead of borrowing money to spend money, let's borrow money to make money. But we're going to set that up. We're going to have a great credit rating. We're going to be able to get investors. We're going to be able to get in lenders because we're going to take care of our personal finances first. Part of treating your personal finances first is also treating your client as, treating your boss, your current job, as a client. Right? Instead of accepting the master-servant relationship that the law describes employment as, you can mentally decide that I am a businessman and that my job is just simply my first client. And the moment I can get a second client or a higher paying client, or to the extent this client does not really serve my interest, then it is time to move on and keep expanding my business. My business is not subservient or subordinate to this job. This job is actually subordinate to me. It works for me And when it doesn't work for me, then I move on to something else. So let's take over our personal finances first. But then last week, we talked about, again, trying to build in, bring it in with the kids, to dream big, but to take those ideas and write them down. Let me say that again. The second part of this is not just to dream, not just to dream big, not to just dream big with our kids, but to actually write it down. I don't care if it's pen or paper. I don't care if it's on a computer. Legally speaking, and again, I'm a lawyer, law professor, legally speaking, ideas are not protectable. Someone can hear your idea, do it tomorrow, and they can admit in court that they stole your idea, and nobody's going to do anything. Ideas are not protected by the law. Writing is. Copyright of what you wrote, your business plan. They can't steal that. If they take your business plan and implement it and steal it and use it, then you can sue them. But just your idea out of your brain? Nope. Too bad, so sad. The courts are going to say, well, you didn't put any effort or energy or money towards that idea, and therefore it's as free as the wind. But once you start putting money and effort and time, and especially writing, into this idea and make it concrete, then you have it protectable. We'll talk later about non-compete agreements and non-disclosure stuff, right? All that fly legal stuff. But right now, let's just put it to paper. Let's take that dream. Let's have all our kids, again, what each child that we have, what is their dream? What is their business? What is their empire going to look like? And let's start there, right? All right, and then but then today, we're going to talk about specifically the business plan and the things that the IRS looks for to determine whether you in fact have a business or a hustle. In other words, I'm going to encourage you to convert your hobbies, the things that you already like to do, the things you already spend money on. I'm a sportsaholic. I spend money on cable television. I spend money on tickets to games. I spend money on the internet and registrations and NBA League Pass and whatnot. And so it would behoove me to become an NBA analyst instead of just an NBA fan. And we're going to talk about why that's important. Right? Just that distinction can make me money by saving me money. Right? Hold on to that. Before we get that, that's going to be the theme of today, right? That business plan, how we're going to convert our hobbies into hustles. Hobbies into hustles, right? Doing the things that you're already good at and then converting them into a for-profit enterprise that will at least help you recoup the money you spent on it in taxes. Again, I'll talk about it in a little more detail, but this show is all about books. So let me talk about the books. Let's talk about some new books that came out, and then we'll return to this subject about black business building. As a matter of fact, I'm trying to build a business too. I write books. I sell books. And so my book selling business, my authorship business, my publishing business, right, I need to be taking this time to elevate it, to make it more productive, more efficient, more solid, a great foundation that you can build upon further and further and further. Without a foundation, house of cards falls apart. All right, so let's talk some books. You ready to talk about some books? Cool. There's only 3 books that came out this week, that were identified this week by the Journal of Blacks in Higher Education. Very, very interesting books. Black Feelings, Race and Effect in the Long 60s by Lisa M. Corrigan. Let me say that again. Black Feelings, Race and Effect in the Long 60s by Lisa M. Corrigan, University Press of Mississippi. And I also know that Lisa Corrigan is a professor at the University of Arkansas in their African American Studies Department. Her issue, as the title mentioned, Black Feelings. Her focus is on emotions, right? And so she's discussing the civil rights era and the distinction between, let's say, integrationists and black radical or black nationalists in terms of emotion, in terms of feeling, right? From her review, from the book. It says, I'm just going to read a little piece in describing it. In the 1969 issue of Negro Digest, a young black arts movement poet, then named Amiri Baraka, right, published We Are Our Feeling, the Black Aesthetic. Baraka's emphasis on the importance of feelings in black selfhood expressed a touchstone for how the black liberation movement grappled with emotions in response to the political and racial violence of the era. Okay. In her latest book, award-winning author Lisa Corrigan suggests that Black Power provided a significant repository for negative feelings, largely black pessimism. I'm gonna pause right there. This term black pessimism is going about. I'm not quite sure what is precisely meant by black pessimism. If it is similar to Derek Bell's racial realism, where we are pessimistic about the ability of law and progressivism and civic republicanism to close the racial wealth gap and effect racial justice, then I get it. However, it still seems to be a way to get around just calling it black nationalism or something else that's very optimistic, right? That I am optimistic that black folks can, in fact, resolve our circumstances and lift ourselves out of racial justice and subordination by business building and political engagement and education and through social connections and institutions. There's no choice. There's no need to argue between economics and politics and social and self and others. All of those distinctions are pretty much false in the sense that we have to do all of those things, right? In order to lift ourselves out of racial subordination, we have to accumulate human capital in terms of education, knowledge, and know-how, social connections to institutions helping our people out, political capital in terms of shaping the environment around us as far as what government does and doesn't do, and then of course financial capital, which undergirds all of it, especially since Citizens United, the Supreme Court says if you ain't got money, you ain't saying nothing in the political arena. So it all works together. So I just wanted to say that about this term black pessimism that seems to be gaining some popularity lately. So let me go back. In her latest book, award-winning author Lisa Corrigan suggests that Black Power provided a significant repository for negative feelings, largely black pessimism, to resist the constant physical violence against black activists and the psychological strain of political disappointment. Okay. Corrigan asserts the emergence of black power as a discourse of black emotional invention in opposition to Kennedy-era white hope. That's interesting to me. I'll go further. As integration became the prevailing discourse of racial liberalism, shaping mid-century discursive structures, so too did racial feelings mold the biopolitical order of postmodern life in America. I'm just going to say with those last two sentences, I'm not precisely clear where we're going with. I have a sense of it, and not only that, Professor Corrigan is a majority scholar, and so perhaps the reason why I'm not getting this precisely is because oftentimes books such as these are how to explain the civil rights movement to your, let's say, average scholarly white Eurocentric author that doesn't have a personal connection to it, right? And so this idea of postmodernism amongst white folks and the black civil rights era, the black civil rights movement and its connection to it seems to be, I don't know, a major theme in this book, which I could be interested in, but I don't know if it's directed towards me, if you know what I'm saying. She says, the review says, by examining the discourses produced by Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Stokely Carmichael, Huey Newton, Eldridge Cleaver, and other black power icons who were marshaling black feelings in the service of black political action, Corrigan traces how black liberation activists mobilized new emotional repertoires. Professor Corrigan's book, her first book, is titled Prison Power, How Prison Influenced the Movement for Black Liberations. Shout out to Donald Tibbs at Drexel and all the other prison law scholars that have done great work. So that's our first book. Black Feelings, Race and Effect in the Long 60s by Lisa Corrigan. All right, interesting stuff. Our second book, Mother to Son. How about that? Mother to Son, Letters to a Black Boy on Identity and Hope by Jasmine L. Holmes. This is interesting. Again, there's a lot of talk, again, since the Mike Brown incident, since Black Lives Matter movement incident, about the relationship between black boys or black children, and then more specifically black boys and the police, and then also black parenting and these black children, particularly black boys. Now, there seems to be this focus, I'm not going to say focus, but I seem to see more writings about mothers to sons, right? And I don't have a problem with that, but I do believe that our situation is more panoramic than that, right? Again, from fathers to sons, fathers to daughters, mothers to daughters, when it comes to dealing with police, dealing with politics, dealing with racial subordination and white supremacy. That said, again, we know we can take this back to Langston Hughes, Mother to Son. Matter of fact, let's take it back to Langston Hughes, Mother to Son. You got 2 minutes? Let's do some Langston Hughes. I'm sorry, Jasmine Holmes. I'm going to get to your book in 2 seconds. But we got to give love to a classic. Well, son, I'll tell you. Life for me ain't been no crystal stair. It's had tacks in it and splinters and boards torn up and places with no carpet on the floor. Bare. But all the time I've been a climbing on and reaching landings and turning corners and sometimes going in the dark where there ain't been no light. So boy, don't you turn back now. Don't you set down on those steps because you find it's kind of hard. Don't you fall now, for I'm still climbing, honey. I still climbing. And life for me ain't been no crystal stair. All right, Langston Hughes. Like classics. We come out back to the bookstore, we got classic poetry like Paul Laurence Dunbar, like Langston Hughes, even a good friend of mine, Tanya Evans, right? And shout out to Philadelphia's own, Central High School's own, Major Jackson, right? Major Jackson down with the Roots crew and King Britt, DJs and Quest and all that. Shout out everybody that has perpetuated the Philly art scene into the 21st century, because you know we got a lot. Now back to this book, Mother to Son, Letters to a Black Boy on Identity and Hope by Jasmine Holmes. Let's talk about her book as it's described by her publisher. Jasmine Holmes shares a series of powerful letters to her young son. These are about her journey as an African-American Christian and what she wants her son to know as he grows and approaches the world as a black man. Holmes deals head-on with issues ranging from discipleship and marriage to biblical justice. So this is not just from a woman to her son. Again, the reason why there's multiple efforts, multiple publishings on this topic is because folks are coming from a lot of different perspectives. So this is from a decidedly Christian perspective. If you would like something from a more progressive perspective, check out Imani Perry. New book. Imani Perry is the author of Prophets in the Hood. She is a professor at Princeton, New Jersey. I believe she lives in Philadelphia. If you're at Uncle Bobby's enough, you might catch her up there. But Imani Perry has also written a book about her sons and growing up in this area. Let me see if I can find that real quick. The title, I would love to honor her with the title. If I can find that. Breathe, A Letter to My Sons, right? By Imani Perry, 2020 NAACP Image Award nominee, right? Published just last year. So, Mother to Son, Letters to a Black Boy on Identity and Hope by Jasmine L. Holmes. And while you're at it, come get Breathe, A Letter to My Sons, published by Imani Perry, author of Prophets in the Hood, Princeton University and Philadelphia resident, I believe. All right. The third book on our list, the third and final book on our list, is The Sociology of W.E.B. Du Bois, Racialized Modernity and the Global Color Line. Let me say that again. The Sociology of W.E.B. Du Bois, Racialized Modernity and the Global Color Line by Jose Itzigzon. Jose Itzigzon and Carita L. Brown out of New York University Press. Great stuff. Let me read again from this jacket. In this authoritative volume, noted scholars Jose Itzigzon, I'm messing that up, Jose Itzigzon and Carita Brown provide a groundbreaking account of Du Bois's theoretical contribution to sociology. Shout out to Eduardo Bonilla Silva and all the black sociologists out there fighting white supremacy, or what they call the analysis of racialized modernity. Further, they examine the implications of developing a Du Boisian sociology for the practice of the discipline today. They go further, saying careful parsing of seminal works provides a much-needed overview for students and scholars looking to gain a better grasp of the ideas of W.E.B. Du Bois. In particular, his understanding of racialized subjectivity, racialized social systems, and the scientific sociology. Further, the authors show that a Du Boisian sociology provides a robust analytical framework for the multi-level examination of individual-level processes, such as the formation of the self, and macro processes such as group formation and mobilization, or the structures of modernity, key concepts for a basic understanding of sociology. What does all that mean? You know what all that means? Race matters. That W.E.B. Du Bois is the first scholar. One of his first works was called The Philadelphia Negro, right? Philadelphia Negro. We special, y'all. And this idea that you have to, in order to examine society properly, in order to have a correct theory, you have to take the lives of black folks seriously. That if you don't include racial dynamics, racial subordination, and white supremacy, now he's not going to talk about that specifically, but yes, if you don't talk about that stuff, if you don't incorporate it in your discussion of the world, if you don't just include that in your discussion of society, then your theories are off. Your theories are incorrect or just quote unquote wrong. What is a theory? Let's start there. What is a theory, right? A theory is a construct or a thought or an idea or a description that predicts, that accurately describes what has happened in the past, and then also predicts correctly what will happen in the future. That is how a theory in academia is judged, right? So, excuse me. I am a fan, again, of Derek Bell's interest convergence theory. The theory says that civil rights will advance only when it is in the interest of elite whites to do so. And he describes why Brown versus Board of Education and all that, the Civil Rights Act of the 60s, why that went forward, because greater labor competition and fighting the perception of American apartheid was important to elite white folks in the 50s, in the 60s, and a part of the 70s. But since then, interest convergence and interest divergence has correctly predicted the Byron Allen case, Citizens United, and other cases that have restricted and retrenched racial rights. And so I say all that to say a theory, that the reason why that theory is attractive to me, why it is quote unquote true, is because it accurately describes the past and then also accurately predicts the future. When you're talking about scientific theories, that's the same thing, right? Do they accurately describe what's come to be, and will it accurately describe what is going to happen? Right? If you mix those chemicals, there's one thing to say this thing was made of these two chemicals. Then next thing you know, when you take those two chemicals and put them together, it better create that thing that you were talking about. That's how we know your theory is correct. Same within sociology, within law, etc. And so this book, I'm suggesting, when it talks about racialized modernity, is that white folks try to ignore race all the time. They try to pretend that it doesn't exist. It's in their interest not to talk about it, right? But here we're talking about W.E.B. Du Bois, and he is basically the first, not only as the first black scholar at graduate of Harvard, first black teacher, not black graduate, but PhD at Harvard. Carter G. Woodson was the second, the first black professor at Harvard and whatnot. His his role was to be the first to interject the concept of race into modern scholarship or modern theories. All right, so Black Feelings, Race and Effect in the Long 60s by Lisa M. Corrigan. Mother to Son, Letters to a Black Boy on Identity Hope by Jasmine L. Holmes. And The Sociology of W.E.B. Du Bois, Racialized Modernity and the Global Colorline by Jose Itzigzon and Corita L. Brown out of New York University Press. All right? So those are our 3 books for the week. We're going to take a couple minutes to now finish our theme about black business building. Wish we'd have had some more books in there about black entrepreneurship. But you know, at Hakim's has Claude Anderson, Powernomics. It's got Dennis Kimbrough's Think and Grow Rich. We got Reginald Lewis's Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun? Sean Rochester, shout out to Sean Rochester, The Black Tax. We have so many books that are there to not only inspire you towards entrepreneurship, but also to help you take steps towards that goal or that accomplishment. And towards that, I want to talk to you about taxes in business. So I'm a tax scholar. That was my role in law schools. And one of the things that saddened me, and one of the reasons I'm doing this, is because sometimes we would write stuff, or we would discover things within the law that was not, again, of interest to white folks or people that granted us tenure or the university, because it just wasn't within their interest. But at the same time, for the people that I grew up, I'm a West Philly native, right? Shout out to Gompers, shout out to Bieber, shout out to Central, shout out to all the public school system. And so when I discovered things within the law that are useful, that are not useful to them, but useful to you all and the people that I grew up with, it is incumbent upon me to kind of bring these folks to the things to you all. And so what I'm bringing to you now is what I call hobbies, turning hobbies into hustles, how to turn your hobbies into what's the IRS called activities engaged in for profit. The IRS recognizes businesses, right, as partnerships, as sole proprietorships, as corporations, as LLCs. We'll talk about that later. But before you even get there, right, before you even get to a quote-unquote formal business, you may be involved in an activity engaged in for profit, right? In other words, let's say you bought a lottery ticket and it won some money. That you won money. You're going to have to report that income as what? Not your job and not your business, as an activity engaged in for profit. If you sell your home at a profit, right? You weren't in a business, and not only that's not your job. That was an activity, the selling of your home for profit. And you're going to get to deduct the expenses that you have incurred in selling that house, in buying that lottery ticket or what have you. Well, that concept is taken advantage of by white folks all the time, especially those with wealth. When I worked at the U.S. Tax Court under Judge John F. Dean in the Special Trial Division, the very first case I worked on was what they call a horse case, right? And what do I mean by a horse case? There's a couple that moves from Kentucky to Maryland, right? They have day jobs. Both of them have a day job. They buy a house with a large farm, I guess you could say, or backyard, whatever you want to call it. And they have a couple horses. They have daughters and they have some horses. And they gotta have a stable. They have to have hay. They have to spend a lot of money on these horses for their daughters. And the question becomes, is this a hobby or a hustle? Because the taxpayer, the owners of the property said, no, this isn't just for our daughters. Our daughters do, in fact, like those horses. But what this really is a horse boarding operation. You got to understand that the Triple Crown of horse racing includes the Preakness Stakes at a racetrack called Pimlico in Baltimore, Maryland. And so these folks are arguing that the reason why they need all this land, the reason why they have these stables, the reason why they pay for all this hay and other stuff and have these horses and maintain these horses is because they need to, they're going to board or be the hotel, Airbnb, for jockeys that are at the Pimlico, that race at the Pimlico, right? That they're in business, or at least striving towards a business. That the reason why they have this stuff is to make money. Now, here's the thing. Just because you're trying to make money doesn't mean that you're going to be at a profit. I could spend, Amazon still really doesn't make a profit. I could spend $1 billion and only bring back 900 million. I could spend $1,000 and only bring back $900. So I've lost $100. I was trying, I had a bona fide intent to make a profit. It just didn't work out that way. Businesses, oftentimes, especially in your first couple years, almost all businesses lose money to begin with. They're still for profit if you have an honest intent to make money. But here's the thing. If you have that honest intent and you've lost $100 or $1,000 or $10,000, you get to deduct that loss against your salary or other income you've made elsewhere. That's important, right? That is what we call a subsidy, right? Being able to take deductions is, we said this before, saving money is the same as making money. So if I save $5 in taxes, then it's the same as making $5 in taxes. And so taking advantage of all the subsidies in the code, that's what wealthy people do. That's what wealthy white people do. And we can either cry about it and fix it, but we know that we don't have power over this code. So the second thing we can do is take advantage of it and not leave those subsidies just for them. Right? If there's subsidies to be had, then we need to get our share. So we need to also convert our hobbies into hustles. And instead of just buying things for our daughters or our sons because they like them, buy them for them because we're going to make some money off of this. There are Madden 2K20 tournaments out there. Right? There are people building video games. So if you are buying video games at $50 a pop for your kids to play with, that $50 is gone. That's a hobby. On the other hand, that same $50 for your kids to learn this video game and then make their own that they will try to sell for a profit, or even just to become the to train on their skills and then make money in NBA 2K tournaments. Right? That becomes now an activity engagement for profit. Matter of fact, why don't you host the tournament? You can host the tournament. Right? We're going to build up some businesses and they can be things that you like to do, right? And if they make money, great, they make money. You're going to have to pay taxes on it. I'll try to hook you up there too. But it made money. The beautiful thing is, even if it doesn't make money, you're building your skills. You're doing something creative. It will make money in the future. And the money you spent on it this year, which you would have done it anyway, you were going to buy that PS4 anyway. You were going to buy that chair and the headphones and all that anyway. But to the extent it's towards making money, that same amount is now deductible on your taxes. Right? So we're talking about helping you out now and in the future. Let me talk an activity engaged in for profit. Here's the IRS's definition. The determination of whether an activity is engaged in for is an activity not engaged in for profit is a factual determination. Neither the code nor the regulations provide an absolute definition. They instead serve to provide guidance in formulating the facts necessary to determine whether an activity is a not-for-profit activity. Historically, Section 183 has been a difficult issue to pursue. Right? In other words, they're saying it's hard to figure out whether someone's trying to make money or not. So let me tell you, I'm not trying to give you a license to defraud the government. I am trying to give you the wherewithal to get the subsidies that the federal government is offering because it wants you to be an entrepreneur. Right? They're trying to subsidize that activity. And to the extent you do it in the way the IRS expects it to be done, what they're saying here is you'll be allowed to deduct those expenses. They have a 9-factor test, right? The IRS has a 9-factor test. It's actually in the regulations. Congress, it's long-standing within the regs. It's 1.183-2B. And it talks about specifically what the IRS is going to look for. And so we're going to take this and say, instead of the IRS looking for it, These are the important things towards creating a business. And we're going to talk about the business plan later, but let's go through the list. There's 9 of these things. And know that they're not just going to add up, 5 versus 4 or 6 versus 3. These are just all the things that you need to talk about when you go up against an IRS agent and say, no, 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 no. This is not just a hobby. This is not a hobby. This is a hustle, right? To argue that it's a hustle and not a hobby, the first thing is going to be the manner in which the taxpayer carried on the activity. The manner. Okay, do you have a website? Do you have a tip jar? Right? If you have a website and a tip jar, did you form an LLC? Did you register with the state? Where are your bank accounts with the name on it? Right? Do you have the checks? So all of those little basic things, even if they cost you a little money to open a bank account, even if it costs you a little money to have a business card or what have you, it still is going to save you money in taxes much later. You got to spend a little money to make money. The expertise of the taxpayer or his or her advisors. Do something you know. The more you're an expert at it, the more the IRS can believe that you were going to try to make some money out of it. So whatever it is you're doing and you do well, I don't care if you like animals, I don't care if you like insects, if you're a foodie, if you're a travel person, all you got to do, right? I mean, have a blog, be a critic, and the fact that you've done it for 20 years or that you have a degree in it helps establish that this is a hobby, and a hustle, not a hobby, and make that explicit in the About You section of your website, right? Oh, this person, I'm not just a person who likes travel. I've traveled to X amount of countries. I did this. I am a member of that organization. All those good things. Number 3, the time and effort expended by the taxpayer in carrying on the activity. Now, here's the trick in that. Write it down. Keep a log, right? Be consistent that you've worked on this hustle over and over again, and it's scheduled, that this is not something that you just choose to do. This is something that you're committed to doing. A hobby is something that you can pick up and put down. A hustle is something that you are working on towards making money, and therefore your time doing it should be consistent. And IRS is not going to just take your testimony. Have some types of logs. Have files. Again, keep all your stuff. Get used to writing stuff down, typing stuff down, and then saving it. Because later, even if you don't look at it, just saving all that paperwork and dumping it on the IRS's desk. Bam! This is why it's not a hobby. This is why it's a hustle, because I put all this effort into it. Number 4, the expectation that the assets used in the activity may appreciate in value. Now here's the thing. So, a tree farm. Okay, going back to these people with these horses. Again, a lot of white folks with money use horses that are typically considered a hobby and created into an activity engaged in for profit, because they say what? Oh, yes, I just bought this horse, but in 3, it's not going to be able to win the Kentucky Derby for 3 more years. So you have to tolerate my losses for 2 or 3 years, because in the 4th year, in the 5th year, we're going to really rake in the dough, right? Some wealthy folks don't have backyards, they have tree farms. Let me say that again. Instead of backyards, all that acreage could be a tree farm. And I'm growing redwoods, right? It may take 50 years for this stuff to grow. When it grows, it's going to be so super valuable, but until then, you have to accept my losses, and I have to argue, I have to make sure I make the point that the money that I'm eventually going to get is going to cover all the losses, right? It's going to cover all the losses. So yes, I've been spending $10,000 a year in my backyard digging a hole. And every year I'm deducting that $10,000. Why? Because I reasonably believe there's a diamond mine at the very bottom, and once I strike it, it's going to cover all the expenses that I had. That's number 4, the expectation that the assets used in the activity may appreciate in value. Again, with your home, buying homes, right? Rental real estate is considered an activity engaged in for profit. And even though I'm not making money right now, even though the rent is I charge $1,100 in rent, but my expenses, including depreciation and all that, is $1,200, taxes, insurance. But guess what? The value of the property is growing over time. That's an activity engaged in for profit, y'all. Number 5, the success of the taxpayer in carrying on other similar or dissimilar activities. So if you made money doing something like this before, you want to include that. And if you haven't, bring in somebody else. Be able to refer to other people who have had success that you are partnering, or at least in a coalition or an association with, that you use them as a consultant, that you talk them, that you just have them on your Rolodex. Right? People that have this experience in doing what you are doing helps lead credence to the argument that you're trying to make money doing this thing. Number 6, the taxpayer's history of income or loss with respect to the activity. Again, if you've made money doing this recently, the IRS is more likely to believe that you are in business, or this is an activity engaged in for profit in years you have a downtime. As a matter of fact, there's a presumption, and I want to say it's either 2 out of 5 or 3 out of 5 years. If you actually had a profit in 3 out of 5 years, then the 6th year there's going to be an assumption that you are engaged in for profit. Number 7, the amount of occasional profits, if any, which are earned. Seems a lot similar to number 6. Number 8, the financial status of the taxpayer, which in my experience hasn't meant anything. If you're wealthy, I guess you can afford to have hobbies, but at the same time, you can afford to take your time with business. If you don't have a lot of money, can I afford to just have hobbies and not do things engaged in for profit? So I would use, especially for our community, I would use 8 to our advantage. That the financial status of the taxpayer, being that I am of low or middle income, suggests very strongly that any money I spend is towards making more money instead of a quote-unquote wasteful hobby. And here's number 9. Elements of personal pleasure or recreation. And this one is kind of a non-factor. Every court case on this subject says, well, you're not required to hate what makes you money. As a matter of fact, if you actually like what you're doing, you're more likely to make money doing it. So number 9, the elements of personal pleasure or recreation. Again, it's used, the IRS will use that if it just seems like, again, oh, you're just playing video games. You have no experience. You have no business plan. You have no website, no business cards, no bank account, and this is a real fun thing to do, right? So this is a hobby instead of a hustle. Your job is to argue the exact opposite. And then when I say your job, your lawyer's job, because what I just described here requires what? A business plan. An LLC. So for all my lawyers that are graduating, that are finding it hard times to pay off those loans by getting into these large law firms, you can help out your community by doing taxes and by taking folks with a good job and helping them save money by converting their hobbies into hustles. The money you save them will be more than your fee. So you make some money, the person saves money. Black people have more, between the two of you, have more human, social, political, and financial capital because of your activities, right? So black lawyers, especially young lawyers that want to open up your own shop, doing taxes and taking those people that have good jobs and saving them money on their taxes and then becoming their business lawyer, helping them create an activity engaged in for profit and then converting that into an LLC or a large business is how you can help folks get in on the ground floor and build that business up to something super powerful and wealthy. And as a lawyer, that's what we should be able to do. We shouldn't going into these law firms and just expecting some corporation to lavish on us large fees. That's easy. Real lawyering is getting in your hands dirty with people, with common folk, and helping build them up. That's when you know you have earned your check. So I'm going to stop there. We're going to continue talking about pandemic black business building. So long as we're locked up, we're going to try to use this time productively and efficiently and build ourselves up. We're going to better educate ourselves and our children. We're going to start and patronize black businesses and institutions. We're going to stop unduly criticizing each other and promoting the myth of black inferiority. That's amassing human, social, political, and financial capital. That is the revolution that will never be televised. See you next week. Hotep.